deprioritizing efficiency and productivity in favor of tradition. Which is why we are here to challenge the culture that is corporate. It does no good to leave something exactly the way that it's always been just because it's always been that way. Hey, I'm Shauna K. Henson, lifestyle design coach, goal strategist, and corporate culture consultant. I am your host today. This is the UnCultured podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I feel like the topics in this podcast are the overlooked pieces of what it means to create a sustainable and really healthy corporate culture. That word healthy is something that I don't think is typically assigned to corporate culture when we really think about it. Lately, I think that the way that we are positioning corporate culture is either a yes to or stand for kind of a thing. It's a yes to all of these things outside in society, or we stand for this thing inside of society. And that is what, in fact, makes a corporate culture appear to be good, at least from the outside. So I feel like, having spent a lot of time as a brand specialist for Fortune 500 companies and other corporations, organizations, and individuals, I feel like at this era that we find ourselves in, people are confusing the word brand and corporate culture. We're thinking about the message that the company portrays as the only aspect of its culture, and it's not so. Corporate culture is special in that it conveys both an external and an internal message. The company at large, the big mission, the big vision that is the company, has a responsibility to its customers, the front facing message, which is the brand, and also internally, that I call the internal brand. Like, what are you saying to your employees? What are you communicating? What do you want to be known for inside of the company that you're running and you're creating, right? And it's not enough to say, well, everybody gets paid, everybody gets a raise, everybody gets time off, everybody gets insurance coverage, that kind of thing. That's like baseline stuff. That's just like taking care of humans. There are other aspects of corporate culture that are being overlooked by and large. Not everybody's getting it wrong, right? But by and large, most companies are not really looking at what it means to have that internal messaging solid so that their internal brand allows an external reflection. That's really all it is. It should, and I use that word very loosely, right? But it should be that the external, the front facing brand messaging aligns completely with what it looks like and feels like to work for that company on a day-to-day basis as an employee. A lot of times there's a mismatch. A lot of times the front-facing messaging of a company is like its most ideal gold standard when the day-to-day, interaction is hell on earth for the people that work there. So, how do we challenge the culture of corporate, which is the tagline for this entire show? How do we challenge the culture of corporate so that it forces the higher ups, it forces the people that are establishing the companies and that are in charge of making those decisions to take a human centered look at what they are doing? It's not enough to say we want to make sales. Who is going to give you the money? Humans. It's not enough to say that we need to be more productive. Who's going to do the work? Humans. I mean, at least until we're living in the age of iRobot, and that's like a different story. I don't have time to get into that, right? But who's going to do the work? It's humans. And humans are not machines. And that's the part that I think corporate culture misses entirely. And a lot of times it's missing in brand message too. There are a lot of companies that want their front-facing messaging to be just accepted from us. This is what we want to say, and so you should just take that from us. Instead of thinking, based on who I want to attract, who I want to air quotes sell to, who I want to make this offer to, who I want to provide for with what I made my company to do, what do they want and need to hear from me to make an easy decision? That's kind of the whole thing. The whole thing is, it's not enough to do whatever you want to do as the higher up, as the person making the decision. It has to be from a space of understanding who it is you are creating, what you are doing for. Now, that's my brand and business consulting hat kind of coming on. But from the other side of this, just understanding and working with humans over the course of the years, it's not enough to say you are an employee, here's your job description, you do your job, and that is it. That is the way that workforce began, right? So if we track the history of workforce, it really comes from a time where people did assembly line and factory level work, which is why 9 to 5 was established. 9 to 5 was when the machines were running, and there needed to be people there to supervise said machining process, right? That was when we first kind of came into this industrial kind of age and era. And we've morphed since then. Then we had offices, we had a tech revolution, we have the internet revolution. Like the whole thing really has started to morph. But some of those original mindsets and thought processes are still ingrained in what we are calling corporate culture. And instead of challenging the culture that is corporate, we just leave it the way that it is and say, oh, well, that's the way that it's always been. And so it must be so. And then you have a situation like a global pandemic that comes along to say, nothing is normal. And you do, in fact, have to challenge everything. So more than ever, corporations have closed their offices. There are buildings that are vacant, where there used to be, bubbling offices and thriving buildings and people working, say it with me, 9 to 5, right? So now what do you have? You have the rise of co-working spaces. You have the rise of remote work. You have the rise of people really embracing what was first kind of outlined in the 4-hour work week as the beginnings of lifestyle design. That's the whole bit. If you can get your work done in a certain amount of time, then that doesn't make you any less productive, right? It doesn't mean that you are somehow inefficient. And as a matter of fact, the science shows that as people have been able to work from home and work remotely more, they've been more productive than ever. And still, some companies are requiring people to come back to work. And still, some companies are requiring people to stick to these core hours, regardless of whether or not they're a morning person or a night person or a middle of the day person. And that's when they get their surge. So they're deprioritizing efficiency and productivity in favor of tradition, which is why we are here to challenge the culture that is corporate. It does no good to leave something exactly the way that it's always been just because it's always been that way. A lot of what corporate culture is based on right now has everything to do with that factory mindset, that initial kind of workforce development flow, and it does not take into account all of the other aspects, the rise of the internet, incorporation of AI, and how that produces even more efficiency and productivity when it's embraced properly, right? And even that, but embracing lifestyle design principles for the humans that are running the company. Imagine that you, as an employee, get the opportunity to design your own schedule so that you are doing your work and tasks when you are most productive and at your best. Imagine that. And being able to do so in the environment that works best for you. Like, I don't mean any harm here, but I work better in Barbados. I have a natural vitamin D deficiency. All the sun is very helpful for me. So when the fall and the winter show up here, I'm based out of Maryland, but when the fall and the winter show up here in Maryland, I am. It's tough, right? So taking that extra step to be able to design a life where going to the island of Barbados where I spend a lot of time to do work, it doesn't take away from my efficiency or efficacy or productivity. As a matter of fact, it adds to it. And because I'm able to operate at my optimal standard and my best and truest self, I am then able to give my clients the best of me, 100%, the best of me. And so even if I have to come back stateside to do something, it's not a problem. Get on the Delta plane, shout out to Delta Airlines, get on a Delta plane and come right on back to do whatever I need to be able to do, right? And that doesn't take away from who I am as a consultant, who I am for my clients, who I am for my staff, who I am for anybody, right? But a lot of companies reject that thought because they think it must be the way that it has been in order for it to work. If companies continue to ignore the revolution of humanity, which really in this case is not about revolting and rebelling, it's more like humanity is evolving. And if companies continue to ignore that evolution, they will find themselves trying to square peg round hole this whole thing, trying to force a natural evolution in humanity back into this square factory sized shaped hole is going to just leave you underproducing, underperforming. And what's wild, and I'm saying you, but not you, but it'll leave the companies underproducing, underperforming. And what's wild is most companies won't even notice. They won't even notice Because this moment is not even about the company. It's more about you as an employee. It's one thing for you to show up to work every day in less than ideal circumstances. Something is on your mind, you've got another project you would rather be focusing on today, but you've got this deadline and you're being forced to show up for meetings. I talked to somebody last week or so that said they have a stand-up meeting every single morning at 8 a.m. And I shuddered. I cannot imagine being required to talk about nothing or everything every single day at 8 a.m. And so then thinking that that creates productivity is the challenge. Because for you as an employee, you know that if you could have the morning off because you're a night person and you could produce your work and it would be on everybody's desk by the next morning. Like if you could work in off-peak office hours, you could be more productive. You know that. You know that that's how you thrive. You know that that's how you present your best work and your best ideas and your best innovations. Companies will reject that. And so instead, you as an employee are required to show up during your core work hours. And then if you want to do the extra work, you are now required to sacrifice evening time, free time, right? To try to be your best self. But now you're disgruntled. Now you're not thinking clearly because you're frustrated about having to give up your free time when you could, as a night person, flip flop your whole day. You could, instead of trying to keep your free time at night, you could do your productive things in the evening and do your free time earlier in the day, not 8 a.m. because you're a night person, so it wouldn't really matter for you, right? But let's say you start like your fun time or your tasks around the house or your errands or things that you've got to do at 2 o'clock, and your juices kick in at 8 p.m. Well, now you can work from 8 to 12, but your day has skewed in the direction that benefits both you and your company. The challenge here is that most companies are rejecting of that idea because they would rather you fit inside of their box versus creating a plan and a strategy that allows you as the individual employee to thrive, completely thrive. So corporate cultures have got to start challenging whether or not they are doing everything on the planet in favor of what just has been because it's a habit and it was based on these old premises and things like that, versus really showing up for the people that they are employing. And I think that's the most important part. Show up for the people that you are employing. And as an employee, that is something you should expect, demand, and really continue to rally around with your cohorts, for yourself. If you're the only person that agrees with what I'm saying, stand up for it, right? You don't have to continue to accept a corporate culture that completely ignores how you are and how you function at your best. Every company, period. Every corporate culture should, in fact, want their employees to be able to function at their best. Ignoring what that best is for each individual employee is, in fact, the downfall. It's the downfall. And again, they wouldn't even know most of the time because it's not like you don't show up for work. It's not like you don't show up and do your job. It's not like you don't answer the emails. It's not like you don't to tick all the boxes, dot the I's and cross the T's. It's not that you don't do those things. It's that, are you doing them at the best of your ability because you are being allowed to consider what that is and how that looks for the current job that you have? For most of you, the answer is no, because companies are getting it wrong. They're just getting it wrong. So if you've ever had that thought, like, man, if I could just work at these other hours that are not required for this peak situation, if I could skip the stand up because the way that my ADHD works, I'm not listening to them anyway. If you've thought, man, I really wish I could design the way that I do my work just a little bit differently, please know that you're not crazy and you're not alone. And sometimes you just need to hear that. You are not crazy and you are not alone. The companies are getting it wrong. And it really is time to challenge the culture of corporate. Hey, thanks for tuning into the UnCultured podcast. I've been your host, Shauna K. Henson, lifestyle design coach, goal strategist, and corporate culture consultant. If this is your first time here, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with somebody you know. If you're coming back for more, thanks so much for being here, and I hope that you'll tune in again. No matter what you're doing in your life, remember to make intentional choices, and wherever you are starting, remember that's not where you have to finish. Your life is yours alone, and your next dream is only one goal strategy away from getting exactly what you desire.